At Dad's birthday, my brother announced, "Pack your bags, loser. This house is going up for sale." Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. I stepped outside and made one phone call. 10 minutes later, the screaming started. Prat 3. I looked at my parents. These proud people who had struggled so hard to keep their financial problems secret. "Dad, when you had your heart attack, I found out about the mortgage default. You were behind on payments for almost a year." "That's impossible," Mom said, but her voice was shaking. "You were 3 months away from foreclosure." I continued gently. "The bank had already started proceedings. They were going to lose the house. But we worked it out." Dad said desperately. "The bank agreed to a payment plan." "No, Dad," I said softly. "The house went to foreclosure auction. It was sold to pay off the mortgage debt." Marcus was looking back and forth between me and our parents, his confident smirk finally starting to fade. "If the house was sold, then who owns it now?" I took a deep breath. "I do." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the room was staring at me like I just confessed to murder. "That's impossible," Marcus said finally. "You don't have that kind of money." "My divorce settlement," I explained. "When Tom and I split up, I got half of everything. The house, the investments, the business. It came to about 900 Zaudert pi. Jennifer's mouth fell open. "You had 900 Zahlhosen and you've been living here like you're broke." "I used most of it to buy this house and pay off the remaining mortgage debt," I said. "I wanted to make sure Mom and Dad had a place to live." "But why didn't you tell us?" Mom asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Because I knew you'd be embarrassed," I said. "And I hoped that maybe Dad's health would improve. That you'd be able to get back on your feet financially, and I could eventually transfer the property back to you." Marcus was shaking his head in disbelief. "So when I said we were going to sell the house, you were talking about selling my house?" I finished. "Without my permission. But you let us think we still owned it." Dad said, his voice breaking. "I didn't want you to feel like you'd lost everything," I said. "I thought I was helping." The room erupted in chaos. Everyone started talking at once, voices raised in confusion, anger, and disbelief. "This is insane," Marcus shouted. "You can't just buy someone's house without telling them. She saved our home." Mom was crying now. "We would have been homeless. But she lied to us for over a year." Aunt Carol added. "She was trying to help." Uncle Jim argued. Through all the shouting, Dad just sat there staring at me. Finally, he raised his hand for quiet. "Alex," he said slowly, "are you telling me that when we were about to lose our home, you used your divorce settlement to save it?" "Yes," I said simply. "And you've been letting us live here for free for over a year." "Yes." "And you never said anything, because you didn't want us to feel bad about losing the house." "Yes." Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then, he started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of bitter laugh you make when you realize how wrong you've been about everything. "We've been treating you like a burden," he said. "Like some kind of freeloader, who couldn't take care of herself." "Robert," Mom said softly. "We didn't know." "We should have known," Dad interrupted. "We should have paid attention. We should have asked questions instead of just assuming the worst." Marcus was still trying to process what had happened. "So you're saying I can't sell the house?" "It's not your house to sell," I said. "It's my house, and I decide what happens to it." "But what about our plans?" Jennifer asked desperately. "The new house, the in-law suite, the pool. You'll have to make other arrangements," I said calmly. "This is ridiculous," Marcus exploded. "You can't just sabotage our family plans because you're jealous." "I'm not sabotaging anything," I said. "I'm protecting my investment. If you want to buy a bigger house, you'll have to do it with your own money." "But we were counting on the sale of house," Jennifer protested. "You were counting on money that wasn't yours," I pointed out. The argument continued for another 20 minutes, with Marcus and Jennifer becoming increasingly desperate as they realized their dream house plan was falling apart. Finally Marcus played his last card. "Fine," he said angrily. "If that's how you want to be, then we'll just cut you out of the family completely. Mom, Dad, you need to choose. Either she goes or we do." The room went quiet again. Mom and Dad looked at each other, then at Marcus, then at me. "You want us to choose?" Dad asked slowly. "Yes," Marcus said confidently. "Choose between your successful son, who's trying to provide for this family, or your failure daughter who's been lying to you for over a year." Dad stood up slowly, his face serious. For a moment, I thought he was going to side with Marcus. After all, Marcus had always been the favorite, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Instead, Dad walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "I choose the daughter who saved our home when we were too proud to ask for help," he said firmly. "I choose the daughter who spent her divorce settlement making sure we had a place to live. I choose the daughter who's been taking care of me since my heart attack, even though we've been treating her like she was the one who needed taking care of." Mom stood up and walked over to us. "I choose the daughter who put our family's needs before her own financial security," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I choose the daughter who's been living here not because she needed our help, but because she was helping us." Marcus stared at them in shock. "You're choosing her over me." "We're choosing the person who's actually been taking care of this family," Dad said. "While you've been making plans to profit from what you thought was our house, she's been making sure we still had a house to live in. This is unbelievable." Marcus said, grabbing Jennifer's hand. Come on, we're leaving. Marcus, wait. Mom called after him. No, he said, turning back to face us. If this is how you want it, then fine. Don't expect any help from us when you need it. And don't expect to see your grandchildren anymore. At Dad's birthday, my brother announced, pack your bags, loser. This house is going up for sale. Everyone cheered and raised their glasses. I stepped outside and made one phone call. 10 minutes later, the screaming started, Pret 4. With that, he stormed out, Jennifer following behind him. Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim looked around awkwardly before making their excuses and leaving as well. Cousin Beth just shrugged and said she'd see us later. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty except for Mom, Dad, and me. We sat in the living room in silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. I'm sorry. I said finally. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. No. Dad said firmly. We're the ones who should be apologizing. We let Marcus convince us that you were the problem when you were actually the solution. I can't believe we were so blind. Mom added. Well, this time, you've been taking care of us and we've been treating you like you were a failure. You're not failures, I said. You hit a rough patch. Dad got sick, medical bills piled up, things got difficult. That happens to a lot of families. But instead of asking for help, we let our pride almost cost us everything. Dad said. If you hadn't stepped in, we would have been homeless. Mom finished quietly. So what happens now? Dad asked. This is your house. Do you want us to move out? I looked around the living room at the family photos on the mantle, at the furniture I'd grown up with, at the home that had shaped who I was. This is our family home, I said. I bought it to keep it in the family, and that's where I want it to stay. You're not going anywhere. But Marcus. Mom started. Marcus made his choice. I said. He chose money and status over family. That's his decision to live with. What if he comes back? Dad asked. What if he apologizes? Then we'll talk, I said. But he's gonna have to accept that this house isn't for sale and that I'm not going anywhere. If he wants to be part of this family, he needs to start treating all of us with respect. A few weeks later, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was different, smaller, less confident than usual. Alex, he said. I've been thinking about what happened at Dad's party. I asked. I was wrong. He admitted. I didn't know what you'd done for Mom and Dad. I didn't know you'd saved their house. You also didn't bother to ask. I pointed out. I know, he said quietly. I was so focused on my own plans that I didn't think about what anyone else needed. Your plans involved selling a house that wasn't and making your sister homeless, I said. Without even discussing it with her first. I know. He repeated. I was horrible. Jennifer and I have been talking, and we realized we were completely out of line. So what's changed? I asked. We found another house, he said. It's not as big as what we were planning, but it's nice. We can afford it without selling Mom and Dad's house. Your house. He corrected himself. That's good to hear. Alex. Marcus said. I was wondering if maybe we could try to fix this. I miss Mom and Dad. The kids miss their grandparents, and I miss having a sister. I thought about it for a moment. Marcus had been cruel and selfish, but he was still my brother. And family is complicated. We can try. I said finally. But there are going to be some ground rules. Whatever you want, he said quickly. First, you apologize to Mom and Dad. Not just for the house thing, but for the way you've been treating me. Done. Second, you stop treating me like I'm a failure or a burden. I'm a grown woman who makes her own decisions and takes care of herself. Absolutely. And third, you never, ever make plans involving other people's property without their permission again. Never. He promised. The family reconciliation wasn't immediate or easy. It took months of awkward dinners and careful conversations before things started to feel normal again. But eventually, Marcus and Jennifer moved into their new house, complete with the pool the kids had wanted. Mom and Dad got to keep living in the home they'd built their life in. And I got to keep my family, complicated as they were. The best part was watching Dad's health improve once the stress of potentially losing his home was gone. He started working in the garden again, fixing things around the house, and generally acting like himself for the first time since his heart attack. You know what the funny thing is? He said to me one evening as we sat down to talk. We sat on the front porch, the same porch where I'd made the phone call that changed everything. What's that? I asked. Marcus spent all that time calling you a loser and a failure. Dad said. But you're the one who turned out to be the most successful of all of us. How do you figure? Success isn't just about making money, or having a fancy job, Dad said. It's about being there for the people you love when they need you most. It's about making sacrifices for your family without expecting anything in return. It's about doing the right thing even when no one knows you're doing it. He was quiet for a moment, then added, Be that measure. You're the most successful person I know. As I sat there on the porch of the house I'd saved, surrounded by the family I protected, I realized Dad was right. Success wasn't about the size of your house, or the amount of money in your bank account. It was about the choices you made when things got difficult, the way you treated the people you loved, and the legacy you left behind. Marcus had learned that lesson too, eventually. And in the end, that made all the difference.